putting this on YouTube. Super duper. Right, so our agenda today, a little bit of an introduction for those who don't know GCF and the work we do. Sarah will be giving us a Poverty Hurts Fund overview, what we've achieved to date, and then we've got some guests having a little chat with us, very quick, probably information that might be helpful and useful to everybody, and then most importantly, an opportunity for all of you to talk and really give us some great information on how poverty is impacting the work that you do and the communities that you work within. We have drafted some discussion questions to help build our understanding, so we will prompt you with some questions, and this will feed into our grant making strategy and the work we do. So all of the decisions we make are from our intensive research, desk-based research and feedback, so it's really important, and we thank you all so much for coming today to help us with our work. So moving on to who we are, a very small introduction. Some of you may already know us, but for those who don't, we're actually part of a national network of 46 community foundations, place-based funders. So we operate in every county across the country. We're all independent charities. So as a place-based funder, we very much support the grassroots organisations, which are, as you know, the lifeblood of our communities. And our grant size is 2,700. So interestingly, small amounts have great impact. And with over 2,500 charities in Gloucestershire, we ensure we fund where the need is for greatest impact. So through extensive research and knowledge on the ground, we fund possibly where others may not. And we reach out to those underfunded organisations who are fighting the hidden or often overlooked issues that really make a difference to Gloucestershire. We are a membership organisation, so essentially we do need to make sure that we operate at the highest levels as we're quality assessed by UKCF. So every 3 years we have a quality assessment. We've obviously passed that with flying colours, which is great, but we remain an independent charity, and all of the community foundations across the country and the world are all independent charities. So interestingly, as we've continued to innovate and grow, which is often maybe we don't have an opportunity to share the work we do, we were actually, unbeknown to us, we were assessed by a national organisation called the FPR rating, so the Foundation Practice. And we were incredibly proud to be recognised for the work we do, as we were awarded the highest grade of grade A. And we were hugely kind of proud, but also very pleased as a small rural organisation and in a rural county that we're absolutely able to work in a very modern way at a national level. And I think that's a really good piece of work that we'll be discussing further in our work going forward. So we were only one of 10 foundations nationally that were awarded this A. And the Foundation Practice rating looks at transparency, accountability and diversity. And interestingly, being in a rural county doesn't mean we can't work in modern ways around diversity. And in the last 3 years, only 20 out of 300 trusts and foundations that were assessed have achieved this award. So we're really proud that our work's being recognised, and we really do try and share this widely. So on that point, I think what's really important is our work around poverty and the work around the fact we have urban and rural deprivation, and the needs are very, very different. And we're really pleased as a small charity and organisation working rural that we have been given that award. And certainly around diversity, yeah, I think the assumption is because we're working rurally and maybe in a smaller county that we're not able to work with diversity in a diverse way. And we really absolutely do. So we're very pleased. I think Esme Fairburn scored a B first time round. So it's a pretty tough scoring. So even though we have achieved some great awards, however, we will always continue to seek out ways to improve what we do by continually consulting those we serve, which are our charities, you guys on this call, and our donors. And events like this enable us to get the feedback we need to make the decisions that are right for the county. So we want to thank you all so much for helping us today. So summing up, if you go on to GCF's vision, it's really simply put, and to bring this together, is Gloucestershire is a place where people and communities are empowered to become resilient and strong. And that is the work, everything we do aims at. Can we actually create real social change? Are we just grant making, a scattergun approach to grant making and some sticking plaster grant making, or are we actually seeing some real changes in our communities? And our job is to support and enable all of you and those charities across the county that can really impact real social change. So moving on, Sarah will continue. We've got 3 core elements of our work at the Community Foundation. Philanthropy is obviously the piece. As the chief exec, I'm Talitha Nelson, if I haven't mentioned it before. Sarah's our grants manager, and Lucy, who's on the call, you'll see, is our operations manager. And the 3 of us work closely together. Now, Sarah will take on forward the elements around grant making, but when we go into the discussion, Lucy will be pulling out some questions out of the chat. So you'll be hearing from all 3 of us. But essentially, our 3 elements are philanthropy, grant making, and our civic influence and community convening. So the piece I will introduce is we support and manage 47 fund holders and donors, individuals, families, charitable trusts and businesses. And we work to encourage people in Gloucestershire to give back in all its forms. So yes, money is hugely important, but we also have our Invest programme where we convene skills, time, mentoring, and pro bono is our newest element of that piece of work. So we really are encouraging giving back in all its forms. I'll pass you over to Sarah, who will continue to talk about the Poverty Hurts appeal and the piece around our grant making.
Hello, sorry, just working out how to unmute myself. So around grant making, I just popped down on this slide. We've currently got 4 grant making programmes open. We'll be focusing on the Poverty Hurts today, but we do also have our main grants round, which awards some slightly larger grants up to about £5,000 and has some really quite open and broad criteria for what we can and can't support. So largely anything really that fits with our vision to help communities become stronger and more resilient, that really fits into the main grants programme. That has 3 rounds every year. Then the High Sheriff also has 3 rounds every year. That's grants of up to £2,500, and it's around supporting young people specifically, and also around supporting young people so that they're detracted away from becoming involved with antisocial behaviour or criminal activities. So that's quite a specific programme. And then we also have our Freemasons grant programme, which is kindly supported by the Gloucestershire Freemasons, who have a fund with us here at the Community Foundation. That awards grants of up to £2,000. It'll support older people, younger people who are facing disadvantage, and people with disabilities or other vulnerabilities. That's a programme that really wants to look at smaller projects and grassroots organisations where that £2,000 can make a really big difference to the organisation. So moving on to what we're here to talk about today, the Poverty Hurts Fund. We're open, it's a rolling programme, so you can apply at any time. We will put some deadlines up just to give people an idea of when we'll be looking at applications and when you might get a response back. The grants are up to £2,500. They're really targeted at supporting the most vulnerable people in our communities, and who are people impacted by poverty, people who are struggling with the cost of living at the moment. People who might be feeling really isolated because they can't afford to leave their homes, people who might be reliant on food banks, people who are reliant on other services around learning about benefits that are available to them. There's quite a broad range of different grants that we've awarded already, and I can run through some of those in a minute. As I said, it's a rolling programme. We may have to pause. We're kind of kicking off fundraising as we speak at the same time as accepting applications. So we're really hoping that we'll be as successful as we have been in previous years, but it might be that we can only give away the money that we've got, really, in all honesty. So it may be that we pause the programme from time to time when the money's spent, but we'll keep our website updated. We tried to keep this programme pretty light touch and simple to apply to. The grant application form is quite short, there's not too many questions on there, and the same with the reporting process. It's a fairly small grant, but one that we hope can give quite a good impact, and we're just really asking in the report if you can explain to us the difference that grant's made to people that you're supporting. There's more information on our website, so I won't bore you for too long on all the criteria of the programme. We've got pages on our grant, pages of our website, and we can share these slides afterwards to everyone that's attended, so that you've got the links for that. So on to what we've achieved really so far. We thought it'd be nice, because I think quite a few of you have probably been to some of our other Let's Talks around the Poverty Hurt. So we really wanted to share where we're at and what's happened with the programmes. We started with the cost of living programme. That was 2 years ago. We've quickly recognised that cost of living perhaps wasn't getting the airspace that it maybe needed to after a year. It wasn't in the headlines quite so much, but it was still very much an issue. So we changed the name of the programme to Poverty Hurts, which really recognises that poverty is still here. It's not going anywhere. It's something we really feel like we need to be supporting. We've raised over £200,000 in the last 2 years. Most of that has now been distributed. So we've awarded just over £180,000 worth of grants, and that's 101 different grants as well. Some of them are to the same organisations because people were able to apply in consecutive years for the funding. From that, we supported over 34,000 vulnerable people in our county. We funded more than 7,000 meals and food parcels. I think it's actually more than that as well. That's kind of quite a pessimistic number, but counting them up. We supported over 280 people with fuel and heating and energy household grants. Supported 40 different warm spaces across Gloucestershire, and other things we've supported. So we've supported cafes, community spaces where people can go to meet. We've supported advice services. Something that we've seen that's had a really good impact is where there's a community hub where lots of different services can be provided to people all in one space, so they can come along, meet other people, socialise, have a warm meal or pick up a food parcel from a food bank, but also access perhaps support or learning into digital skills, some advice about benefits that might be available, or just have somebody really to listen to any questions or concerns that anybody might have attending that hub. Those have worked really well. They've brought communities together in terms of people volunteering, and I say being a really good welcoming space for anybody in the community to access. I just popped on a map here, which was quite interesting really to look at where our grants were going. So there's some real hotspots around our towns and cities in Gloucestershire. So around Gloucester, there's a lot of grants that have gone in that area. Cheltenham, Stroud, and then in our more rural areas, we've got some spots too around Cirencester. There are some gaps, but I think the thing to note about this map is that organisations might tend to be based in a town, but they're probably not only working in that town. So they're probably covering much wider areas than just the postcode that they're based in. But we do need to be looking more at perhaps some of our more rural areas and what's out there that can support people. And we're trying to look at, over this next year, trying to address some of that and keep reaching out to organisations, attending community events in some of those rural locations, just to encourage where perhaps there isn't that much available for people and there aren't quite so many services available to access, how we can help with getting some work off the ground, how we can bring some services into some of those areas. So if anyone has any thoughts on that or things we should be making sure we attend, then we'd love to hear about that. Got a few people on the call who had said they were really happy to share perhaps a few words about the grant that they've received as well. I've got Steph Smythe from Cirencester Opportunity Group was the first person. Would you mind just saying a little bit about your grant, Steph?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, good, because my sound is a bit intermittent my end and I'm not too sure why.
Yeah, we can hear you really clearly.
Oh, good. So yes, we were really fortunate to have the Property Hurts grant, and it really made a big difference for our team as well as our beneficiaries, because it was really nice to have that money set aside, knowing that we could really do a lot and help people with it in practical ways. So it's been great to be able to have one-to-one time with some of the parents we support and have those conversations about what really would help, and then actually be able to then say, well, we can help with that. So the grant has really, made a big difference in that way. Some examples have been really simple things like purchasing can openers, because a lot of the cheaper tinned food that might be available doesn't have the ring pull. So you have to have a can opener and other like basic cooking essentials that some people might take for granted. But if you don't have them, it's really hard to make a meal. So we've sort of been looking at things like that and finding out what people already have and what they need, as well as supporting people with their electricity bills at times, helping with school uniform purchases. So, we've been very aware that when, your child starts school, it should be like a happy, positive time. But if you've got that stress of how to afford the uniform, it sort of takes away some of that happiness. So it was really nice to be able to, give that reassurance, but also have those conversations about supermarket uniform, not having to worry about some of the more expensive items that are branded. You don't always need to. So the conversations that the grant opened up were really, really useful for our team to sort of find out as much as possible. And also, the other thing has just been our sharing shed, which we have been able to keep it stocked up with items that we know people might not necessarily want to ask for, but we know are really important. It could be toiletries, additional food and cleaning items. So yes, thank you so much for your support.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Steph. That's great to hear about your grant, and I really enjoyed reading your report as well. It was really quite moving to hear some of the stories of people that have been supported.
Oh, thank you.
And then also,
thank you so much.
Lucy from the Parent Care Alliance, would you mind saying a little bit about your grant?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. So, like Sarah said, my name is Lucy Fuller from the Parent Care Alliance. We support a large number of families with disabled children in the county. We provide advocacy mostly, but we have heard so much from our families that they were being really impacted by the cost of living crisis. And so I was really concerned what we could provide, especially through the previous Christmas and summer holidays. Towards the end of the summer holidays, especially, families were absolutely contacting us in desperation for food, and we were really concerned. Also in terms of like nappies and wet wipes for meeting their disabled children's needs, that it really felt like a crisis point for our parents. So we've reached out to what the cost of living fund initially, and partnered with our local food hub. And we, as a first event, invited the Citizens Advice Bureau to the food hub together with ourselves to test and learn, really, to see what would work. Many of our families were telling us that they only had so many spoons left of energy, and that actually if we could bring people together to provide support and bring it to them in one space, that would really help them. and that event really worked. We managed to provide food parcels for families. Citizens Advice Bureau also provided energy advice as an initial session, and the interest in that event was really significant. We also provided toys for the children. That was really well received, but we wanted to build on that, and the Food Hub themselves really saw a way of for their weekly sessions being able to reach more people and help more people with bringing other agencies into that space. So that really grew. We then decided to apply again to the Poverty Hurts to try and provide a Christmas session and a planned way for parent carers to help them to be able to afford Christmas, to be able to provide food. And we also invited the Citizens Advice Bureau again. And we were really lucky that other organisations also joined with us. So we also had the Town Council then provided a grant as well. The Citizens Advice Bureau provided a grant for coats for winter coats for one family. Another family had a flooring grant. We provided some lovely Christmas presents, and also the Food Hub then provided food. We had such a lovely reaction from our families in terms of how much help that they felt that they received. They also got our family support workers to help with special educational needs issues and other benefit forms like DLA, and so that then has grown, and it feels like it's growing all the time. So in between that, I was really conscious that we knew that the grant funding is episodic, shall we say, and we needed to spend it, but I really was conscious that we didn't have and weren't establishing a longer term solution to access food for our community. So we've recently managed to partner with FareShares to try and get a lower cost source of providing these foods so that our money could potentially go further. And we've been testing and learning with their deliveries most recently. And that's working really well. And so we're really excited we've managed to build up a community hub, and we're getting more interest all the time. So thank you so much for the funding. We absolutely need more. We really feel that we're being given the opportunity to make a longer term difference. We really feel like we're hoping to create a more sustainable food bank for our families as well. And I've just actually had a delivery, and so I'm off out to make some deliveries after this call. But it's lovely to be able to help people. There's so many families that are experiencing a real problem with transferring over from ESA to universal credit. There's a lot of families that haven't got disabled children in a school place, unfortunately, this September, and child benefit is being stopped because they think that the child isn't in full-time education. And all of these families are just falling through the holes, and we're advocating for them, but we can also help them with food in the interim. So your funding has really made a difference to be able to help them. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
We were due to have Anna from Creative Sustainability speak for us, but I don't think she's joined the call. So I don't know if anyone else who's had a grant would like to share anything about the grant they've received.
Sarah, there was just a comment from from Steph. She was just saying that they collect surplus food from FareShare as well, and that they recommend Neighbourly, if that's helpful at all.
Yeah, that's a really good resource for using food that would otherwise go to waste, isn't it? So
great. Okay, well, that's really helpful and certainly information I've not heard before. with the disabled children not getting school play, really, really, really concerning that benefits are being stopped. So this is definitely new information for us, and definitely a site for need. So thank you for sharing, and this is what we're here for, really, to educate us on some of the things that are going on and some of the changes and the impact it's having. So thank you for highlighting things that we didn't know.
I'll just share my slides again. Next up on our agenda is to welcome Rory Burke from the Better Housing, Better Homes, who can talk through some of the support they're able to provide.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
We can see you.
Hello. Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll try and share my screen.
Yeah.
Just have a little presentation. I'll try and keep this short and sweet, and yeah, leave some time for you guys to ask some questions as well at the end if needed. So as Sarah mentioned, my name's Rory. I work for a charity called the National Energy Foundation, and I work on the service that we provide, which helps people who are in or facing fuel poverty, which is called Better Housing, Better Health. The service was founded over 10 years ago. We originally started operating in Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, which is nearer to where the National Energy Foundation is based in Milton Keynes. And over the past few years, we've been able to expand quite a lot. So we now cover quite a lot of the country. And we recently expanded into Gloucestershire about 6 months ago. So just coming up to our first winter here. And essentially, I'm just trying to let people know what we do, how we support people, and the funding that we've got that we're trying to distribute to the people that need it the most and are going to be worried about their fuel bills this winter or going to be freezing cold at home this winter. So that is just a little bit of background about who we are. I'll then just quickly introduce what fuel poverty is. So the sort of official definition made by the government in England is that for someone to be in fuel poverty or classified as being fuel poor, they need to meet both of these two different parts. So on the one hand, it's that they have a residual income that leaves them below the poverty line, which essentially is the income after their housing costs and energy needs leaves them below the poverty line, and that they live in a property which has a low energy efficiency. Officially an energy efficiency rating below a band C. You might be familiar with these this rating chart. You get them on like new electrical appliances, TVs, dishwashers, that sort of thing. But they also apply for households and homes. So the lower the energy efficiency, the more heat you're going to lose, and so therefore the more expensive it's going to be to heat that property. So obviously you can see that these two things are linked and that one of them is going to impact the other. But what we found is that the way that we can intervene with these two issues is different and that they can be treated differently. Another thing that we found was that because this was sort of the official definition, we were finding that there were people who were meeting one of these criteria but not the other, and so not being officially classified as in fuel poverty. So potentially someone who lives in a really poor energy efficiency household, but just comes above that income threshold, or vice versa. They've got really low income, but they live in an A-rated property for energy efficiency, let's say, and these people weren't classified as fuel poor, which was making a little bit of a gap in sort of people not meeting these sorts of specific criteria. So for that reason, one of the important things that we did for our service was that we said we would have no eligibility criteria to access our service and a lot of the support that we provide as well. So we didn't want people just falling outside the gaps or just falling through the gaps, just falling outside the boundaries. We did want to be able to help as many people as we possibly can. And so we removed the eligibility criteria for the service, which means anyone and everyone who would like our support, would need support with energy advice, whatever it may be, we are there to help. And there's always some sort of support that we can give. With that being said, and as I've just mentioned, that this definition is quite constrictive and does miss a lot of people who are still struggling, The most recent government data that's been published is from 2022, and it's saying that there's 3.26 million households in England are in fuel poverty, officially in fuel poverty, meeting that specific definition. So that's about 1 in 6 households, which is obviously a huge, huge number. And that's for those that are meeting that definition. So there's going to be so many more that would be struggling, that are going to be struggling this winter. As you can see, this is the most recent data that's from 2022. The sort of forecast already, or the expectation that we've got for this winter, is that we'll see a lot more households fall into this boundary or fall under this boundary because of the reduction in the support that's available from the government, the increase in the energy price cap, which happened a couple of days ago on the 1st of October. It went up about 10%. We are anticipating that this number will be more. So obviously you can see just how universal of an issue this is when we're saying that, 2 years ago, 1 in 6 households were facing this, and now we're anticipating it to be even more. You can just see the number of people that are affected by fuel poverty and just how widespread that issue is. I'm then going to go straight into the services that we provide to help these people who would be in fuel poverty. So, as I mentioned, we operate a service which has no eligibility criteria. We've also tried to make the service as easy to access as possible. For that reason, we've got a free helpline number anyone can call. We've got an email address people can get in touch with us, which benefit obviously out of office hours communication. And we've got a referral form as well on our website, which is very straightforward, which can be filled out by both frontline professionals and organizations like yourselves, or people, residents, households can directly refer themselves through that form as well. Because we have no eligibility criteria, it means that that form is really straightforward to fill out, because you don't have to worry about people meeting X, Y, and Z and having loads of different fields. At the very least, all we need is name, telephone number, and postcode, and then everything else we can take from there. And anything else that you can provide just makes it a little bit easier for our advisors, but it's not necessary at all. When someone first gets in contact with us, we will run through a series of questions so that we can understand the specific issues that they're having with their energy providers, their bills, whatever it may be. And it also allows us to prioritize some of the services that we offer, so that we call the most important parts or most important issues first, and then look at how we can put in some more longer term solutions after that. So the service we provide is a case management style. We will make continued contact with the residents and with people that you refer over to us. It's not designed to be just a one call, one contact, and that's it. It's supposed to be that we'll talk to them initially, tackle the priority issues, and then look at ways that we can support them further than that over a longer period of time. So things that we can do immediately and straight away are a lot of these common interventions that are mentioned here. So they will be advice with general energy issues. This can be help with understanding bills and what they're being billed for, issues with energy suppliers or changing tariffs. It can be issues with damp and mold, so behavioral changes and how you can reduce the impact of damp and mold, and behavioral changes and how you can improve your energy efficiency, reduce your energy bills. We'll also advise people on the debt that they've got with their energy company and how they can access trust funds to wipe off this debt. Or we can sign people to the Priority Services Register, as it says here, which is a free service available from all major energy suppliers, where vulnerable households, so that's young children, people of old age, and people with long-term health conditions, can get priority access in the event of a power cut, or if they've got communication needs. It's not something that you notice every day, but it's really, really useful to have coming into play when you need it. And our advisors will sign people up usually when they're on that first phone call with them. And we'll also refer on to other locally available services for other issues that they may have that don't fall under fuel poverty. So obviously, when you look at fuel poverty, there's always issues completely across the board with a lot of different things. So be that health issues, food, if people struggling with transport to work, whatever it may be, we'll try and find other local support services that we can refer into. Outside of this, we then have three main services which we provide, which range from real short-term solutions to much longer-term solutions, which are really looking at targeting those two parts of fuel poverty that I mentioned at the start, with people having or spending a large portion of their income on energy bills, or people living in a really low energy efficiency property. So I'll just start with the first one, which is our shortest term solution. It's our most in-demand service, particularly over the winter months, and that is our emergency fuel voucher scheme. So this is where we can issue residents and households with fuel vouchers that are worth £49, where they can top up using their prepayment meter. So this is another one of the services we provide which has no eligibility criteria. So any household that pays for their energy via a prepayment meter can access these vouchers. We can issue up to 3 vouchers per calendar year. So that'll be 3 by December, by the end of December. And obviously these can be super important and super vital in the real short term when people are looking at spending a weekend or without gas maybe, or don't have electricity for the evening, whatever it may be. Can be very, very crucial in the short term. To access these vouchers, residents will need to be directly referred into the website. I'll send Sarah a link to the website so she can share it around with everyone after the meeting. But for the fuel vouchers specifically, people do need to be referred in via the website. From there, we've then got a couple of other services that we provide, which are looking at more longer term support. So this being the real short term solutions, and then we look at trying to combat the root issues of fuel poverty and trying to reduce the impact of that. So the second service I'm going to talk about is where we help people to access funding towards larger energy efficiency improvements to their property. So this would be for things like insulation and heating systems primarily, and is really targeted at those houses that are low energy efficiency. So those E, F, G grades on that chart that we were talking about at the start. The way that we work is through the National Energy Foundation. We have a network of installers across the country which go through a vetting process to join our network. So they're all, fully signed off by us. And once they pass that process, that then allows us to refer the residents that we work with and that we identify as being eligible for these funding routes directly into their service, which means that we can carry on the case management that we provide as they go through that process. So they'll still have that same advisor on our team who they can always talk to. They can always come back to if they've got any questions, any issues, they can come back to us. We find that working in that way really helps us avoid a lot of the confusion around this subject, because so often we see that people get overwhelmed with the amount of choice, loads of different companies offering loads of different things. And if we say, look, here are your options, we'll lay them all out, everything that's available to you, and then we can say, this will be your best option because you get the most funding, and we can put you directly in touch with someone who's going to be able to do this and deliver this for you. And then you can always come back to us if you've got any issues, and we can help them from there. We also have funding available for broken boilers, broken heating systems, so any sort of storage heater, whatever it may be. If it's the heating system or primary heating system for the house, then we've got funding to repair or replace that heating system. This side of the service is where we see the biggest impact on energy efficiency and the biggest reduction in energy bills over a longer period of time. But the one drawback to it is that it's primarily for people who are in private sector housing. So most of these funding routes are available to people who are owning their own home. And some of them are available to people who rent the property privately. But we were finding that there are a lot of people who are in social housing, sorry. So council housing or housing association properties who weren't able to access this funding because they don't have the choice over you know, they can't make changes to the fabric and the insulation of the property. So we were finding that there was a little bit of a gap and we were struggling to help those people, which is why we developed the third service I'm going to talk about, which is mentioned at the bottom of this slide here. And that's where we can supply people with energy efficiency items, which are designed to improve energy efficiency and reduce heat loss. So these are where we can issue people with items that make a real noticeable practical difference to their energy efficiency without having to go through making large insulation changes or large heating system changes. Some of these items include things like draft proofing measures, thermally insulated curtains, electric blankets, which we found can be very, very cost effective, particularly for people who can't leave the house during the day, but obviously can't keep the heating on all day. Dehumidifiers, if there's bad damp and mold issues, energy efficiency light bulbs. There's quite a comprehensive list of things that we can provide people, which obviously are aimed at reducing energy bills over a longer period of time. So making that more medium to long-term difference, as we spoke about at the start. They're the main services we provide.
One more minute, Rory.
That's perfect because I am basically finished. So
Great.
I've just got a final slide here of just how to get in contact with us. There's the phone number on there, the website, the email address. Please feel free to just give us a Google, check out the referral form. As I mentioned, it is really straightforward. And if you've got any questions, let me know. I'll drop my email address in the chat and I'll send some information along with the slides to Sarah to share it around with everyone. So if you do need anything else, please let me know. And I guess if we do have time, I'll be happy to open up to questions, but if not, I'm more than happy to step away.
Yeah, any questions? Definitely. Very, very useful. I don't think many of us probably knew of those resources, so absolutely brilliant. Any questions from anyone?
Lucy, did you have a question for Rory? Lucy Fullard.
Hi, Rory. Just really great to hear what you're doing and what you offer, and would really benefit our families. And obviously, many families with disabled children have really significantly high energy bills due to running and charging equipment. And also, if there's health needs, then the need for the consistent temperature within the home is really important. And we just really wanted to extend an invite to you that if you are available to join our Christmas next event at the Hub, which is early December, you'd be really welcome, because I'm sure what you've shared and especially the vouchers for the prepayment meters would really make a difference for these families in December if you are available.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we do often, and we often do go out to community events and those sorts of things, talk to people directly, face to face. So yeah, send me the information about it. I'll send it over to the delivery team and see if we do have anyone. One thing I will say is that over winter, our capacity to go to these events does reduce quite a lot because we get so busy and we've essentially need as much time or as many people as possible on the phones, you know, answering calls, helping people. So might not be possible, but it is something that we do. So send me the information and I'll have a see if there's anyone who can come out to you.
Thank you. Is it possible that you could put your email address in the chat?
Yes, yeah, I will do.
Thank you so much.
And just another quick one, Rory, do you cover the whole of Gloucestershire?
Yes, so we cover all of Gloucestershire and South Gloucestershire as well, which is obviously outside the county council.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much, Rory. That was hugely informative, and I know it's going to be incredibly useful for everybody. When we talk about poverty, our initial piece, the cost of living crisis, very much focused on the choice between eating and heating. And certainly we had one of the highest excess winter deaths in Gloucestershire in the country, around 400. So it's a massive issue around Christmas and certainly the winter period. But actually, when we move on, the reason why we turned it into Poverty Hurts Appeal is around the piece around poverty being yes, fuel and food, but more around the lack of access to services for a decent life. And access to services means absolutely everything. And I think Rory touched on things like transport. So I think the conversation and the questions we have, please widen it as far as you can in terms of all areas of poverty, and thinking about that lack of access to services for people to have a decent life. The last lot of stats we put together was 1/3 of children are living in poverty in our county, which is really shocking. So I guess if you looked at any schoolroom, 1/3 of those children sat there are living in poverty. So I think it's quite alarming rates of poverty in our county. It's certainly still being quite overlooked, and there's definite different needs between rural and urban. So we'll open it up for discussion questions. Sarah, do you want to open the floor to the first question?
Right, so we've got, first question was, what signs of poverty are you seeing in your community and amongst the people you support? We're quite happy if you want to type things in the chat, or if anyone would like to talk about their experiences at the moment.
So if you raise your hand, put you in order, and then if you want to ask questions through the chat, Lucy will bring those up in between people.
Yeah, at the moment I can see Lisa Robertson, you've got your hand up. And
I've got my hand up too.
Yeah, I'll come round. I've got 2 or 3 on the screen. Yeah. So, oh, should we try? Actually, we'll try you then, Kenya. As you're here and you're not muted, you can. Would you like to say?
Hi. Okay. Thank you. My name's Keena Doran. I live in Chipping Campden, so I was very interested to hear you guys say there's a big difference between urban and rural poverty, because we notice that very greatly. We're very far north. We have next to no services. There's an immense amount of pressure on, for instance, parents who've got children with mental health problems, and the fact they have to take time out of work where they may be wage earners to take children to appointments to Gloucester, Cheltenham, etc. So they lose half a day's pay. We've also got the creeping county lines coming into the area. A lot of that is poverty driven or lack of hope driven. And with rural areas like ours, because it's so, the perception is that it's so wealthy, poverty is definitely hidden under the carpet. And people don't like it mentioned because it destroys the rural idyll. But we have a huge amount of gentrification here. People are marginalised by default as a result of it. All of our function rooms have gone. The British Legion has gone. Every affordable place for people to go to on lower incomes are literally gone. And our transportation links are appalling.
Yeah.
One of the things, we've set up lots of initiatives here, but we get little to no support from our local council, which is a major issue. My focus is on young people and keeping them out of the county lines circle. That's not easy because we have a police that are quite reluctant to actually take action down here. So I've seen a massive increase in dealing. One of our local kids in Mickleton got shot and killed in London, and I've been predicting a tragedy of that nature. That has now spilled over into our area where the local children are being threatened to keep their mouths shut, etc., etc. So we have people who've set up lots of things, like we've got our own first responders now because we don't get ambulance. We've got a community support hub which supports vulnerable people, so I can feed back to them what you guys have been talking about today, so that's very useful. But I set up with a friend a youth arts charity approximately 10 years ago. It took us about 5 years to get people to understand there is rural poverty. We are currently supporting 55 children on an ongoing basis to take part in music, drama, singing, anything arts related. And that's on an ongoing basis. So we've got more children, it's measurable because we've got more children going into GCSE. It helps to improve mental health. It keeps them off the streets. It gives them hope for the future. It takes away that very one-dimensional, that one size fits all where children are concerned. So it actually helps with the disaffected kids. Trying to work out a system where we can work with children who are at risk of exclusion from school. So we want to take some very innovative approaches to that. But as a result of the work we do, we realise that if we pay for a child to have a music lesson 12 miles away in Stratford-on-Avon, then the parent has to put that child in a car, maybe with 2 or 3 siblings, and drive them all to it. So we try to set up everything on our doorstep. So we're setting up a grassroots football team as well, because we think boys are particularly vulnerable to the county lines and to external influences. And we're going to set up a girls team as well. We've had a lot of support for that from the ex-owner of Sheffield United, but we haven't got a football pitch for them to play on because our council won't let us play on it, on the recreation ground, for whatever reason. So everything is a very uphill battle. We're all here, we're all willing, we're keen. Our charities, totally, all the money goes to the charity. We're all volunteers.
Sorry,
we pick. Sorry.
What's the charity name?
It's called Camden Edge, CAMPDEN, Camden Edge.
Yep, brilliant. Thank you.
And as a result of it, I do a lot of for some obscure reason, having never had children, I get on very well with the teenagers. They come around my house and they tell me their problems. And we've worked out a system of getting them into private counselling if they've had a trauma-based experience and they need help immediately, rather than waiting 2.5 years for CAMS or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a huge amount more we could do. But I would like to see a forum like this that specifically deals with the problems that we have in very rural areas, and where we can put pressure onto the police and the other services. I mean, I've had experiences with mental health services saying to a client when he was in crisis, I'm sorry, we don't normally come out that far.
Yeah.
And I witnessed 32 incidents on another vulnerable patient, which were all picked up by the police and the ambulance service rather than mental health services.
Yeah.
And that's no good, because it means police resources are being diminished because mental health services aren't doing their jobs properly.
Yeah.
And that in turn led me to Parliament to give evidence at a scrutiny committee meeting. But I have to say, I'm tired.
Yeah.
You know, so we could do with more, at some stage, a more focused approach to very rural areas.
Good point. Good point.
Because if we can if we can get more pressure on, housing associations should be more careful about who they place here, not because we don't want unsavoury people here, but people are being put here with children who've got special needs or adults with profound mental health problems. They in turn don't get the support they need. They're not making the friends that they need. They don't have family here, and it becomes chaotic for everybody. So as you can see, I've got a lot to say.
Well, it's an important point about this joined up piece, isn't it? You know, it's a huge piece of work of how can we work better together. And I think you're really right. And we've identified that at GCF. How can we reach rural deprivation? How can we reach those working in rural communities? Because the sadness of it all, and when I speak to the police who are underfunded, under massive pressure, I mean, I spoke to the chief exec and she said, you know, when you're in special measures, we have 6 assessments in a year. It's like an Ofsted. We have 6 of them, and we don't get the money other counties get because we're seen as a wealthy county. So every area seems to be underfunded, trying their very best. But there is definitely an appetite, and I think the positive is there's definite appetite to work better together. So I think you're right. You know, if you are sending people to an area where there's no services or access to what they need, and the pressure it puts on everybody, it's a bit of a no-brainer to work out how do we
it's
coordinate.
heartbreaking to watch people
Yeah.
struggle in the way that they're struggling.
Yeah.
But then if you've got people who live around them who aren't understanding of their needs, then literally chaos ensues.
Yeah.
And what you end up doing is you're putting vulnerable people who who are moving in to already vulnerable people.
Yeah.
So there's no foresight in terms of, can we actually put this family of 5 children next to an adult who has got profound mental health problems?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is,
I think these are probably slightly bigger issues than we can deal with at the moment, but I think we have to talk about it.
Just in the conversation.
With your point about rural focus and urban focus, I was talking to the chief exec of Nebraska Community Foundation, and it's a £1 billion endowment, and it's enormous. He said, Talitha, Gloucestershire is very similar to Nebraska, and I'm thinking, really? But he said, you've got exactly the same issues as we do. The rural and urban deprivation is very different, and very different challenges and very different needs, and that's our task really as a community foundation with finite resources. You know, how can we support equally across the county when there's very different challenges and needs? And I think your point is a bit about that joining up. So I think, yes, we should do probably a slight split around urban and rural, and it's something we're thinking about and how to go about it. So thank you, Keena. You sound like you're doing an amazing job. I don't know what they would do without you out there.
Very tired. Somebody just asked for my email address, but I didn't notice. Do you get those notifications? Can you pass emailers on?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not sure you can access the chat.
No,
so I'll pass on your email address to Lizzie.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you.
And then Lucy, if you could pull out any questions only rather than comments.
We did have one question. It just scrolled back to it. So from Lisa. So from Fabab, hello. Yes, so she was just saying that they are funding a warm space, but they're running out of funding, and they've lost all their amenities.
Sorry?
And they're wondering, Sarah, whether or not the grant, Poverty Hurts grant, would cover the cost of keeping the group going. It's helping with isolation and connections.
Yeah, that sounds like something that would be a fit. We've got a few more people with hands up as well.
Put them in order, Sarah. Who's first?
Yeah, so Lisa, you've got your hand up to speak. Lisa Robertson.
Okay, who's next?
Claire Natman, you've got your hand up.
Claire, are you available?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I will be very brief. I just from Citizens Advice, sorry, I'm from North and West Gloucestershire Citizens Advice. So for those of you who don't know, we cover Gloucester, Cheltenham, Tewkesbury and the Forest of Dean. And then Stroud and Cotswold Citizens Advice cover the other 2 districts in Gloucestershire. I won't give you lots of facts and figures now. I think I concur with what we're being said, that it's a problem across the board, but it is different in rural and urban, mainly because of the access to those local services and the cost of getting to services for people. For us, you've mentioned energy today. For us, we give out grants for energy, and we usually see a dip in demand during the summer period. That hasn't happened at all this year. That you won't be surprised that that's been consistent. Really, I just came on to, without, I could talk for hours, and I know we haven't got that. So there's 2 things I wanted to say. That if there's any data, I'm happy to share and meet with you to share. We have a lot of data for the people we see. In North and West Gloucestershire, we help about 14,000 people a year. So there's an awful lot of information that we can share with you.
That would be amazing for us just to back up our especially
so it would be good to connect, I think, on that. And then the other thing is we do various projects. One of them, we've got Lizzie in the room, as it were, and one of them is a thing called Advice First Aid. That's really looking at supporting people on the front line, and I think that will probably work with a lot of the people who are working here. present here. I won't do a pitch now. I think what the best thing to do is to meet with you at some point and share the information so that we can connect with people further down the line as the project develops. But it's very much about supporting people on the front line and allowing Citizens Advice to work closely with people.
Amazing. Claire,
to get the information.
Just think if you want to pop me over anything that I can share, because I'm going to share the slides and some information.
Yes, I will do.
As well. So if you've got anything you'd like me to share with the group at the same time, then I'm happy to do that.
Also, we resource page Lucy has put together, so if any organisations come to us, there's a resource page on our website, so we can add any services or anything you're able to offer under a Poverty Hurts heading, can't we, Lucy?
Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Who's next hand up, Sarah?
I've got Claire, another Claire.
Hello, yes, I'm here. I'm Claire Madioni from Stroud Valleys Project, and we work mainly in the Stroud district, and I think I really agree with the urban and rural issues that people have been talking about, and particularly with funding. I'm finding it quite often, I think you said that Gloucestershire is seen as a wealthy county, and it's and pockets of rural deprivation are recognised, but it still means that when you're up against an organisation that's from the middle of Liverpool, you don't stand a chance of getting the funding.
Yeah.
So that's difficult. I think as an organisation, we found people find transport difficult. There's the isolation is difficult, and particularly for older people. They don't. I mean, sometimes they don't have broadband, but a lot of the older people don't want it anyway. They don't want, but the broadband wouldn't help them, and they're not interested in having the broadband. Because one of the things, what we do is we work with people and take them outdoors doing outdoor conservation work. The thing that we find is that people sometimes don't have the right clothes to wear.
Yeah.
So, you know, you need really sturdy boots and waterproof gear. And sometimes people just don't have that. So they come out once and they don't have the right clothes. Yeah. We sometimes have a stock of clothes, you know, that we've got from charity shops, so we can give them. But what we had when the pandemic was here, we had an emergency fund, which was just a fund so that we could fund people's transport so they could join in, or we could buy them some clothes, or we could help them get a mobile phone so that they could communicate with people. And what we found that, and I found it really easy to get that money then, because it was recognised that there were a lot of people in need. Would this fund, Poverty Hurts, fund an emergency fund so that you can support people now when they need it?
Yeah, we have supported things like that before through the grants program. So sort of things that are quite flexible for sort of incidental things that people need.
Yeah.
Yes, that is something that we can look to fund.
Okay, thank you.
Who else has got their hands up? I think
Lizzie,
yeah.
Hi, just wanted, I know it's been touched on a little bit in the last comments about the rural-urban divide, but I just wanted to let you know a couple of things. There's a rural poverty task force that was initially came out of a lot of research that the Real Farming Trust did. And they now there's a group that meet, and that's facilitated by Feeding Britain. I sit on that task force and I sort of try and represent the county in that work. I'm also working across the sort of three main rural districts of Gloucestershire at the moment, Stroud, Cotswold and Forest of Dean, very informally, but the districts have identified that obviously the rurality of their areas makes the delivery and some of the issues very different. And a part of our work is to work in collaboration to share learning across those rural areas and what works well and what doesn't, but also to raise awareness at county and national level around funding and delivery, that there needs to be a better understanding of the complexities of rural areas. And part of the rural task force nationally is bringing together some of the big national funders to really have a conversation with them about targeting funding in a slightly different way, and at least sort of appreciating that some funding pots are not as accessible and deliverable in rural areas as they are in urban areas. So we'd be very happy to triage some of that information down to others if that's useful.
So Lizzie, the community foundations of the Southwest have got together to discuss and sort of look at how we tackle rural deprivation. The Rural Reality Report that recently came out. So it might be worth, as much as tapping into the national funders, looking at the community foundations across rural patches. The Rural Reality Report, and we can share it with anyone who's interested, is around rural coastal areas. I'm hoping it.
Sorry about that. I think someone muted and it caused an echo.
So it's basically Cornwall Community Foundation, Somerset Community Foundation, Devon, and Wiltshire, Gloucestershire. So it might be worth tapping into national and local community foundation work as well. That'd be great to sort of see how we can join that piece of work up. Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to move on. We've got a couple of questions. I'm going to combine the next two. There is, have you seen a change in the needs of your clients or numbers of clients? I think we would like to think about, since we did this last year, what are the changes you're seeing? I think it was brilliant to hear from the Citizens Advice, new information, certainly probably what we all thought, and that is poverty has not decreased over the summer months, and it's continued at a continuum from winter. So we'd love to hear from you about any changes that you've seen year on year, any statistics this year that are different from last year, and if you could tag that on to the impact that's had on your finances, that would be brilliant. Anyone else who can share some light on how the last year has developed with the cost of living crisis exacerbating. Anyone that could put their hand up, please do. I can't see hands, so if you could let me know.
I think, yeah, Kina has put a hand up.
Okay, brilliant.
Well, thanks. It's only that there was obviously with our charity, there was a dip in requirement during COVID, and then there has been an increase in applications subsequently. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry. Yeah.
One of the things we've noticed is what the business model we set up for our charity, because it was one of the easiest ways for us to work, was to work with the schools and to work with children who are pupil premium children. Because we're very embedded in the community as well, we're very cognizant of the fact that we get told local stories where families are in trouble financially that don't necessarily meet that criteria. And we have seen a huge rise in applications in the last maybe I'd say 15 to 18 months, and we are trying to broaden what we do to ensure that we can cope with children who don't qualify for pupil premium. But then we're getting applications by people because when their children turn 16, the government wants children to stay on at school to A levels, but then they cut the funding of pupil premium and they cut the bus. So we're getting, now we can't do it because it's outside our charity objectives, but we're getting applications from people to say, can you pay for the bus fare, because they're outside an area and we can't afford it. And there's, you know, the idiocy is empty spaces on buses, siblings on buses, and child with special educational needs who was driven to school by her mother but wants to be on the bus and isn't coping well with being driven. So we are getting a lot more applications and we're getting a lot more sort of diversity in the applications we get. And we can signpost them elsewhere, we try our hardest. If we can't fund, we will approach other charities on behalf of the family, purely because it's quite an onerous thing for people to admit they don't have the money to pay for their kids to go to school.
Yeah.
So
that's very helpful. Thank you, Keena. I've got
Hassan's got his hand.
Rebecca's got her hand up. Yeah. Rebecca? I think
Hi,
you put your hand a couple of times. Sorry, I've missed you. You're on the bottom.
It's yeah, it's I'm just going to get rid of that. Yeah, I work for Siren Sister Housing for young people, and we support 16 to 25-year-old homeless people or people at risk of becoming imminently homeless. And what we are currently finding is the level of support required. So, you know, even going back sort of 4 or 5 years, we had lots of people that were coming to us through family breakdown and lots of different issues. But now the levels of mental health challenges and self-harm, drug use is increased exponentially. And that has its toll on our staff, because in staffing we have a system whereby we have day staff, and then we have evening, and then we have night staff, so it's 24 hours supported. But what actually happens is we don't have loads of staff. We have you know, 4 main day staff that sort of work on our rota. Most of our staff are part-time, and then we have, like I said, a group of night staff. And when things happen, they often happen at night. There's often issues and episodes that happen at night, and at the moment it's, and for the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months, it's been almost relentless. And there was a patch around Christmas last year, which again was really relentless, and that means that our day staff who are on call are called out in the middle of the night to help and support whoever's on that night shift, because we have certain lone working policies. That means that someone always has to be around and be able to come in. So and that because we have quite a small staff, it means that lots of those people are having to then come in the morning as well. And if you know, if you've been up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, it's really difficult. And what makes it worse is, so what we try and do is we have part-time staff so we can have more staff, but we're finding it really hard to recruit, because we can't even compete wage-wise realistically with the supermarkets. And the stress levels involved are just so much higher. And it's become such a difficult situation at the moment, and we can't employ, because we are 16 to 25, realistically we couldn't employ someone even for night staff under 27, 28, and that as long as they've got experience, because it's a difficult job, and you are dealing with young adults, and it just helps if we have that little bit of age difference. But so that sort of removes a whole load of people that might be interested in maybe that slightly lower paid role, or more transitional roles potentially. And it's really difficult to find. You know, there are, you think of, you know, maybe parents that may want some extra income, you know, but then they've got children to look at. It's recruitment at the moment is awful. It's just horrific for us.
And that's really interesting. I think everybody's had to look at their pay, certainly over the last couple of years with inflation, and some charities have been able to afford to pay it and some haven't, and it is such a challenge, isn't it, especially with the type of everybody does. I just wanted to pick up on someone, didn't quite catch where you were from. It was Siren Sister Housing, wasn't it?
Housing for young people, CHIP. We've got a shop as well in Siren Sister. We've been around for 38 years,
amazing,
doing what we do, and actually, you know, it's just, some of our staff have been there 20 years.
Wow.
It's just and we managed to keep hold of those ones,
which, you know, again, we have this piece saying, you know, this is a lovely wealthy town, but, you know, you are one of those organizations that are picking up the pieces, and, you know, for a lot of your young people, they really have lack of access to so much. They just don't have the access. If they lived in the middle of a town, you know, you could walk somewhere or catch the bus somewhere to services, but, you know, Cirencester sounds like a lovely place, and it is for many, but actually for our young people there is just so little, and it's absolutely vital to have organisations like yourselves. I just wonder, you know, obviously we're talking about the challenges, but what some of the solutions could be. I wonder, is there any solutions around how we could sell the charity sector to people, how wonderful it is to come and work in the charity sector? How do we tackle that piece around you know, recruitment is a real challenge. Has anyone on the call had any success with recruitment, something they've done that's attracted some good candidates, or something they've done that's attracted more candidates? Has anyone had any successes around recruitment? One person raised their hand. Who's that? Can't see.
It's Kina again.
Oh, you, yeah. Have you had success with recruitment?
We're all volunteers, and I just wondered, from Rebecca's point of view, whether or not you'd have volunteer posts, because there's a lot of people who are retired who don't necessarily want to earn an income but want to do something useful. So you could talk about retired police officers, retired teachers, retired social workers. And
we have so particularly the evening slot, we've been able to sometimes get some people to come in and do some voluntary work, especially things like supper club and things like that. We've had some quite good success with that, but never for like really long periods of time. It's quite transient. People seem to come and go in those roles, and I don't know whether we're attracting the wrong people, so any advice around that would be great. But yeah, I think the night staff issue, we tend to have trained staff as well. There's definitely a certain level of training which all of our staff require just to deal with the vulnerabilities, and obviously staying in a house with young vulnerable people, there is a quite a level of training that's required for that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that evening slot, definitely there's potential for more volunteer support for that couple of hours that we have. But yeah, if anyone has got any ideas, I mean, there are organisations like The Door who run, you know, huge amounts of volunteers, and you know, I'm totally in awe of that because of the way that they do that. But over the years we have tried it, and it might be to do with our framework, I'm not sure, but we've never managed to make that work ever so well for us, and it might be because it is quite stressful, I think. Working day to day, living with those and those relationships and all that, and that, you know, with those teens and young adults, I'm not sure.
Good one to share though, and it's certainly something we've heard over the last year or two around recruitment. So it's a tough one, and certainly one we need to be talking about. And I think valuing the sector, we're still completely undervalued, and that's a really big piece of work we try and do. You know, it's not about cake baking and all the things people sort of assume charity work's about. It's absolutely life-saving and life-changing work. So we really do need to value the sector and the enormous amount of income we put into the economy, which is never talked about. So a whole other conversation. Now, I think Hassan had his hand up next. I don't know whether he's around to talk about anything. Hassan?
Hello, Talisa. Hello, everyone. I'm still around. So living in an urban area in the city, I have noticed changes in people's spending habits because I work with a lot of people at the mosque, and prior to COVID and prior to Brexit, I noticed there are always opportunities to earn money. People would always have spare cash in their pocket, which meant it was easy for people on a weekend to travel and watch a football team at a football stadium, or lads to get together and jump into the car, drive to Bristol or somewhere to go out and eat. But I've not noticed these things. Definitely spending habits have changed. People have got less spare money in their pocket. People are not traveling out as much. So it's definitely affected the people living in the city. Though there are always benefits to living in the city. There are more people you can talk to. There are more services out there. But definitely spare money in the pocket, it just doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's interesting. So you've really seen that. Is it less people that you're feeling? I mean, you're in Gloucester at the mosque there. Are you seeing less people out and about? Does it feel quieter, or
I'm not
supporting?
I'm not hearing people complaining. It's just I'm just noticing people are not spending as much, and it's most people just don't have that spare money like they used to back in the day.
Yeah. So that disposable income, people are living very much week to week, aren't they? Okay, thanks so much, Hassan. Anyone else that can contribute to any changes that they're seeing? Certainly whether the stats are changing around winter need escalating, whether it's all year round now, and the impact on your finances. If your need is rising, how are you tackling supporting that rising need? How are you actually tackling that with your finances and your finite resources? Anybody that
Claire's got her hands up. Claire.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to touch on recruitment. I don't know how this would help, Rebecca, but we've recruited about 20 people over the last 2 years, 25 people, and we changed our advertising from the role to a trainee role. So we advertised every role as a trainee as well as the role itself, and really targeted people with the right skills in terms of empathy and their ability to learn quickly, etc. And that transformed the way we're able to recruit. It did mean a lot of training, and I do get a lot of my team saying, "What do you mean we've got a new post?" Because we've got to recruit and train. But actually, it forced us to, look at our training for staff. We're fortunate because we've got the citizens advice training in our back pocket. So I appreciate that doesn't work, but that for staff,
it's true. If we get anyone in, we have to take them in with untrained and then train them up. I think in the last few years we've managed to find one person who had any type of training in the area that was willing to take on the role. So I absolutely agree with you. If you can get people in, it's pretty much the only way to take people on. I guess as a trainee post, I don't know whether we actually position it like that or whether we just say normally no training required, we will train you. But I'll definitely look at how we word it, actually. I was just wondering as well whether you put any other benefits to working for your organisation, because I'm not sure there are that many benefits for working for us.
Well, the other thing we did, sorry, I'm conscious of time, we invested, and it wasn't a lot of money, in an employment support programme. But actually that's been quite good. We've had a number of our team have sought counselling through that and sought support that they may not have come to us for, which has been, sounds negative that they're going in a way that they need to go for counselling, but that might be from work but also personal. So that was quite good, but it wasn't a massive cost. And then we've been as generous as we can be with holiday, and we've advertised that because and the other thing is we gave everyone their birthday off, and we introduced a birthday, and that went down. If I could have taken a photo of my team when I said it at a staff meeting, in fact I wish I had, because when I said we've decided to have a birthday policy and everyone gets their birthday off, it was like
interesting,
so nice, because you don't get much for working, you don't get a lot of money, but you do get between Christmas and New Year, you do get holidays, and the birthday is about them, and that very quickly from a culture change means that suddenly we're singing happy birthday a lot, because now everyone's remembering and getting cards and a small gift, and it's changed the office environment because it's about their day, and that was quite nice.
That's fantastic. I love that. And I mean, it's a really simple one, isn't it? But actually the impact it has, and certainly culturally, I think if we feel valued in our role and recognised, it goes a long way. So thank you so much for that. Anybody else?
Sarah Bourne's got her hand up.
Sarah Bourne? Sarah from the Churn?
Yeah, hi, sorry, my mic was being a bit slow. I just wanted to make I don't know if it's a helpful way forward, but I've been in a meeting also this morning with Matt from the VCS Alliance, and one of the things that's on the agenda, and I think it's an important way to look at how we're structuring the sector going forward, because it does appear to me that there's lots of people working in silos out there doing amazing work and amazing things, but there isn't any strength in that, and we're not going to change a lot of these issues that we're talking about. The reality is that it's going to be tough for some time, and it's looking at ways forward and solutions. And I think it's moving towards trying to join things up as a county, and how we do that with the rural, the urban, looking at mapping the voluntary sector, and maybe collaborative funding, match funding, sharing resources, looking at how to access them and stuff like that. I know that's, you know, a massive project in itself, but I do think there are some positive moves towards that. Certainly in the Cotswolds, we've been talking about, you know, meeting more frequently, you know, and looking at pulling our resources together, and maybe for us as in the Cotswolds, a larger organisation, how we can support smaller organisations and move forward with a bit of a different model. I just don't think we can solve some of these other things otherwise. So yes, I mean, we've been seeing all of those things. I mean, I think, you know, work capacity is certainly an issue for us, and very, very innovative ways of trying to, you know, not turn anyone away, and, you know, avoid waiting lists and respond to everyone is just becoming a lot harder to do. But we are looking at solutions for that as well, though. Funnily enough, we've had quite a bit of a turnaround with recruitment, but I do think it's just a bit of a different job here. I think the stresses of Rebecca's situation, it's always a high turnover because it's a very demanding environment. But yes, I think it's sort of looking at those two things separately, isn't it? It's like everyone's surviving and funding day to day, but also how do we move forward, and, you know,
Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah, anyway,
it takes us on to our last question very nicely, actually. And I think with funding being limited, I guess our question back to people is, how can GCF best help you and your community? And I think, you know, we have finite resources, and is it a bit about that joining up? Is there other things that we can do? So, you know, our funding is limited. So any thoughts from anybody on here about how GCF can best help you, or the sector, or the county? We've got 3 people with their hands up. Sarah, do you want to call some out?
Yeah, just quickly, I just wanted to throw something new out there.
Mute.
Which Sarah?
Sarah Dharma.
Oh, shush, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, if you carry on, Sarah, if you want, and then after that.
Okay, no, I'll just say something really, really quickly. One of the things I think that's quite a new idea, and it's only just starting to become a real funding thing, is social value. And I was just wondering whether there's some information sharing and some help that could be provided to organisations to look at how they're matching their social value with certain businesses and stuff going forward, to look at a different way to fund. It's certainly something this government's very popular with, and I just think it's a bit way down the line, but if we start maybe getting something moving now, it might be useful just to sort of think about how that works, because I think it's quite interesting of you know, like support future.
Okay, great, Sarah, thank you. Any other ways that GCF can best help your organisations, your community?
So Rhiannon's got her hand up.
Hiya. I just think something that I've sort of noticed, not necessarily between charities, I think that is slightly better, but interagency working and getting us together. So things like this is really helpful for me personally, sort of working from home or doing home visits. I don't often get out into the community or see people all together. So I think pulling us together like this, it makes us talk to one another. It opens those lines of communication between, whether it's charities, whether it's other agencies, it reopens that. So it's just re-establishing those and redefining that we're actually all trying to work together. We have mostly got the same outcome and desire. It's how can we come together, how can we share this information within data protection regulations, keeping everything nice and neat. Yeah, just I like seeing these, and I think more of these would be useful.
That's really helpful, actually. I mean, we used to do quite a lot of Let's Talks, Let Listens, and our own work and capacity and these are the sorts of things that end up being put on the side a bit just because we are such a minute team, but actually we recognise just how important they are, and actually we've been asked for them, so it's really good to hear that they are useful, and they are needed, and we'll absolutely continue to provide opportunities to come together, which is so important, for your own isolation. You know, a lot of, like you say, a lot of charity workers are working in isolation, and it's really important you feel part of a community in your county, as well as sharing information and how you can run your own organisations and work, maybe meet people on here. I think one of the conversations I had, which is why we initially realised these were really important, is someone said to me, the meeting was really interesting, but actually it was the chat I had with someone in the chat box, and we're now working together. And I was like, amazing. If all we have to do is set up an online call and people start working together and collaborating, then that's absolutely brilliant. That's what we need to continue to do. So thank you for that feedback. That's really important. Thank you. Sarah?
Mark had his hand up. Did you still want to speak, Mark?
I put it back down really because that was pretty much what I was going to say. Bringing people together and collaborating, I think, is key, is fundamental. But also, it's a way of advising all the other organisations of where other perhaps funding pots are available that they can apply to. So I think that's really important as well, because there are lots of different funds all over the place, as we know, and how we can, you know, as you know, I'm involved in charities that find it difficult to reach the smaller organisations, a lot of which are represented here today. They don't know where we are, and we don't know where they are, and we're not able to give the money away.
Yeah, exactly. I just wonder, with our resource page, Lucy, I think we've got funding elements on there, haven't we, where other funding pots are. So I think we have sharing of information. I think, Mark, is really key, like you say, how we can bring that information to the forefront. I know the VCSE do a great newsletter which has funding as an area. So who sends? Sorry, I've missed some of the questions, Lucy. Do you want to pick up the chat?
Yeah. So I was just going to say there were a couple of links in the chat that might be useful, but I'm quite happy to send them around in an email afterwards for people, save people sorting through. And we just had a question from Vanessa. She was asking whether or not we could provide a support letter if we funded their project, to say that that's what we've done, almost like a reference letter, I suppose, that they could use to send to other funders.
Yeah, that's a really important point, actually. I don't know if many of you know, but with the Gloucestershire Gateway Trust and the services, we were the first £10,000 that was donated to that enormous project. And £10,000 wasn't very much money at the time, but one of our trustees, it was the hugest amount of money GCF had ever donated towards a project. But it did give Mark the opportunity of saying, GCF has funded us. And it leveraged other funding, and look at where it is today. So that was quite an important moment for us to fund an organisation, take a risk, and for that organisation to develop further funding. And we've had that feedback from other organisations saying, as GCS funded, our due diligence is absolutely at the very highest. Everybody knows community foundations, when they fund an organisation, it's a very safe bet. And it does give other funders the opportunity, and it's why we're in Gloss Funders, is we can give confidence to the other funders in the room when we've funded an organisation to say, yep, we've done the due diligence, we know them, they do amazing work. So I absolutely do agree, we need to support you, if we have funded you, support you in your endeavours to leverage further funding. So a good point for us to do, but we're always happy for you to put us down as a reference or put us down as having funded you, and most people do, and it does go a long way. But if there's anything further that's maybe being requested, we're absolutely happy to help, and maybe it could be something that's downloadable and fairly easy to access. So one for
yeah, so I quite often get asked if I can provide a reference, and I'm really happy to do that, to kind of with organisations explain, yes, we funded this project, these are the outcomes we saw, we received a good end of grant report, those kind of bits of information I'm really happy to share.
I'm just mindful of time. Is there any other feedback in terms of how we can support the county better, your organisations better, and the sorts of things maybe we're not doing you would like to see us doing?
Kina's got
a hand up.
Just because obviously you're very well connected with all the stakeholders, maybe some sort of volunteer mentors for people who want to set up their own projects. We learnt from the ground floor up. We just started Camden Edge and said, here we go. But in fact, I do quite a lot of chats with work with the Cotswold District Council Rural Engagement Team. And for instance, our charity would be very happy to go out and talk to other stakeholders, other interested parties about how we set it up and how easy it is for us now to run a charity because of the model that we've adopted. And one of the other things, we're very, very about giving feedback. We're absolutely on the ball about giving feedback to our funders about how their funding has helped, because then that helps them attract more money. People don't always want to know the sad side of a charity. They want to see the successes and the difference that they're making. So we have measurable success, and it's a delight to actually be able to turn around to a funder and say, we've got 8 children doing GCSEs this year. They weren't going to do it last year because they couldn't afford it. We've got 3 A-level students, and people love it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about impact reporting, and it's certainly the area that everybody probably has the main challenge on. How do you quantify in order to give funders or anybody, or leverage more funding, or when you're speaking to donors, the impact you're having? And it's certainly a discussion we're having internally as well. How can we demonstrate our impact visibly better, that it makes sense, and what are the measurables? So it's, I think, anything which is working really well, or where you're getting really good feedback from, maybe that's something for us to think about for another meeting.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just to say though, I mean, I'm not a measuring kind of person, because we see the impact in other ways. We see the confidence the children gain, the improvement in mental health, the pressures that comes off the families.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you're applying for funding, that isn't quite so quantifiable unless people actually understand that already. So there's a balance between measuring in terms of exams and measuring in terms of the improvements to children's lives, etc., and family lives.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I think for us it's very much a combination of those things that we would like to see in our reports. In an ideal world, there might be a few facts and figures, but also some great stories about how somebody's life has improved or changed as a result of the funding.
Absolutely, we get great stories.
The sort of things, because it's not, and there's plenty of charities that will tell us it's not possible to put into numbers necessarily, or fit people into boxes of what they've done, because people are also very different and their needs are all really different. So I think it is a combination of all of those things, really.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because you know that's how we run the charity basically. So that is good to hear.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Now, any last comments from anybody about what we've discussed today? Anything that's popped up from previous conversations that you think is really important, and to share it with us before we finish up?
Rebecca has her hand up.
I don't think Rebecca's there actually.
No. Oh, okay.
I think she's probably been called away to something.
Anything in the chat box?
No, nothing.
Mostly quite a few people have just needed to dash out now that we're
well, brilliant. Well, Sarah, do share the last slide. If any of you are on socials, please follow us. We're pretty active. We like to engage with organisations and conversations. So please do follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,